Right then, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking about Kobbie Mayu and his contract and anything else that comes up as well. So get your questions in and we'll stick into them. This was scheduled a little bit earlier, but I was deep in spirited conversation with my mobile phone provider. And I basically had a 2.5 hour long mess about this morning. But either way, we are resolved, sort of. Cheers for tuning in. Let's get stuck into it. So Stephen Railston has reported that United and Kobbie Mainoo could part ways in the summer. Could being the key one there, due to unresolved contract negotiations that began back in March 2024. However, he signed that contract, so that's not true. Either way, he says there's a genuine chance of Mainoo leaving if no compromise is reached. There's a lot of ifs and coulds doing a lot of heavy lifting in this for me. And United potentially could seek 17 million for the academy graduate, and a move that could count as pure profit and under the PSR rules. He also said that his inconsistent season, which has included a muscle injury and a lack of a settled role under Amorim, who has experimented with him in midfield at number 10, could lead to him being moved on. Again, coulds and maybes and whataboutisms. Here's the top and bottom of it. He is the lowest paid player in the Manchester United squad, right? Let's deal in facts here for a minute. Is he the lowest paid first team player in the United squad? Yes. Should he be paid more? Yes. He's worth more, right? Especially when you consider the likes of Mason Mount are on 250 whatever a week. Same with Luke Shaw, right? Okay, Kobbie Mainoo's injured at the moment, but he's played more since Mount arrived than Mount has, by a lot, and has been pretty useful in doing that at the same time as well. So should he be paid more? Absolutely. Is he undervalued and underpaid when you take into account some of the other first team players in the squad? Yes. Do I believe that this talk that's coming out is agent led? Yes, I do. And that's the crux of it. I see some of the comments there saying, if he wants 180 grand a week, where's that come from? Is it grounded in any truth whatsoever? Do you think he's asked for 180 grand a week? Now, I don't know. I'm not saying that he has. I'm not saying that he hasn't. I'm just saying, where's these numbers coming from? Don't believe the numbers that you see him put out there, because everything is PR and spin. Everything. If you're seeing that he wants 200 grand a week, consider the source. Who is saying he wants 200 grand a week? And why are they saying it? Yeah? And who's putting out that he wants a new contract? That's easy to follow. He's his agent. Is he saying that he wants 200 grand a week? Probably not. And if he is, I think he's an idiot. Which I sort of feel like he might be anyway, to be honest with you. Ahead of the cup final, it came out that Mainoo might go to Manchester City. Where did that come from? I personally feel like that came from his agent. I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like it came from his agent. And I feel like that was probably, at the time, misguided in an attempt to force United into making a contract offer, which they did, which he signed, which is the current structure that he's on now, which was an improvement from the very basic academy wages that he was on. So do I think he's looking for an extension on that and an upgrade? Yeah, I do. And I think he's probably worth that due to his status being a first choice first team player. Now, do I think that means he's worth 120, 150, 180 grand a week? No. And Manchester United have to have a wage structure that allows us to compete and not see utter madness. David De Gea was the highest paid goalkeeper in the world when he was at Manchester United. And one of the reasons that he had to go, and one of the reasons that people refused to consider or accept, was that we weren't getting value for money out of the highest paid goalkeeper on earth. He was good, but he weren't the best goalkeeper on earth, right? And people were like, well, Onana's no better. Onana's on not even close. I don't even know if it's half of what De Gea was on. So when the club tries to redress the outrageous wages, and this all started with Sanchez and the 470 grand a week or whatever he was on, and it's probably one of the reasons why Casemiro and Rashford are being ostracised in the manner that they are. The club has to get wages under control. So in the midst of getting wages under control, when you see rumours of 180 grand a week for Kobbie Mainoo, if that was true, and there's such a big if in that, if that was true, then I'd have no dramas whatsoever in moving Kobbie Mainoo on. I don't believe it's true. And I think he'll probably sign for somewhere in the region of 75 to 100-ish sort of ballpark. And I think that would be perfectly acceptable for a first-choice player at Manchester United. The club have to give him room to grow from a financial point of view. You can't just give him, what you give Sancho and that. But you do have to reward him for being a Manchester United player. And I think that's the top and bottom of it. There's been so many mistakes made in terms of signings, but you've got the likes of Ahmad and Xerxes and probably to a greater or lesser degree, Højlund, that are all on pretty modest wages. I mean, they're probably on a little bit more than me and you lads. But in terms of Premier League footballers, and certainly in terms of Manchester United footballers, they're on pretty modest wages. Competitive wages. I think that would be a better term, wouldn't it? Competitive. Because of the environment and the role that they're in. They're competitive wages. They're not outrageous. They're not head scratchers. They're like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, wouldn't mind being a couple of quid behind him, but, it is what it is. Ineos have got to get that down. With the stadium to buy, the billion that we've been paying out in interest, the billion that we still owe, the wages have to come down. No two ways around it. That's what makes me doubt all of this that's coming out in terms of Mainoo. Now, I absolutely believe that his agent is responsible for putting out a portion of the talk that we're hearing. A portion. When it comes to the numbers and the figures involved, if he's put them out, he's a fucking idiot. Because I think all he's done is turn some of the fan base against a player that nobody in the fan base should have anything against. And they're putting things in people's minds that the player's probably not even responsible for doing. Like, I'm too much of a busy fucker, right? So I'd want to know the ins and outs of everything. And I'm in my own business, I read contracts. I'm that guy. I read rules of the leagues that like Paddock are in and stuff like that. And I find things like, you'd be shocked. Get fined if your captain's not got his armband at our level. Like if you have the wrong corner flags. There are specific corner flags you are supposed to use at our level. I'm supposed to wear a pink bib, right? On the sideline. I don't, and I'd rather pay the fine, to be honest with you. But them's the rules. That's how it's supposed to go down. But I read the rules. So if it was me and I was a player, I would want to know what's going on with my contract because I'm an obsessive planner. So I would want to know what's going on with that sort of stuff. However, most footballers are not that. And they're so much more blasé about their futures than I could even dream of being. I know footballers who are in the final year of their contracts and I'll be like, mate, what are you doing next year? And they're like, I don't know yet. I'll get to the end of the season and figure it out. I'd be having kittens. I'd have like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, everything all lined up, ready to go. And I would know the circumstances which would need to be triggered in each of those plans. And you think I'm joking? I am not even close to joking. That's how obsessive I plan. But a lot of footballers, they have agents to manage that entire process with them. And they probably like so the Paul Scholes thing. I'd like to stay and I'd like at least 3 or 4 years. And whatever in terms of wages. And you'd be shocked at how many players whose answer to be like, what we're looking at in terms of wages would be whatever. Whatever's right. So many of them couldn't give a shit. That's not universal, and that's not every single player. And some players really do care about how much they're on, and some players want to be able to walk in that dressing room knowing that they're the number one, knowing that no one else is paid as much. Put clauses in their contracts to make sure that they're paid the highest. Some people don't give a shit. So like I said, all I'm saying is don't believe everything you read in terms of where these... you always think about where that rumour's coming from because I guarantee it ain't a player. Guarantee it. Shay says, Could a club do a base salary, then hitting certain targets gets X amount for more goals, assists, appearances, and stuff like that? They absolutely can, and they absolutely should. The problem is, there's no agreement across clubs. The Premier League was founded on parity in terms of the clubs at the top and the clubs at the bottom all get pretty much weighed in when it comes to the TV money. And that was what they wanted it. They could have had it a different way. In La Liga, for example, Barcelona and Real Madrid, as they probably should, get the lion's share of all the TV money. And it's created this, essentially a 2-3 horse race in La Liga because, all of the people tuning in, paying subscriptions to watch the Liga, they want to watch Barcelona and Real Madrid. They're not wanting to watch Getafe and Rayo Vallecano. They're just not, being realistic. But the Premier League chose a different route. There's a ratio between how much the highest paid team in the Premier League can get versus the lowest team. And I think it was 1.2 at the start of the Premier League. I think the likes of Manchester City, who rail against it constantly, have upped it to either 1.5 or 1.6. So let's say Manchester City, for example, get 160 million. The bottom team needs to be getting 100 million. Something like there's a ratio where in La Liga, the likes of Rayo Vallecano can get 20 million and Real Madrid can get 200 million or 250 million. Like there's no parity kind of clause in their TV money distribution. There is no agreement across clubs where they'd be like, listen, and there's certainly no cap, we're not going to pay more than 150 grand a week for our under 21 players. If you try to institute that, there'll be a club that goes, look at Saudi. There'll be a club that goes, I'm going to do 200. Fuck you lot. And that's how wages just constantly spiral up. Constantly just spiral up because there'll always be a team that'll pay you more. And that's the top and bottom of it. There'll always be a team that's willing to pay more. And you as an agent, you sit down with a club and the club goes, right, we're going to pay you like a proper, I can't call it crap, 20 grand a week basic, but if we win something, you'll get 120 grand a week. Some players will be like, fine, I think we're going to win everything, so it's not a problem. Some players will be like, I'm not signing that because actually Nottingham Forest are offering me 90, I don't need to win anything. And that's the problem. That's the problem that you get, is there'll always be someone, especially because of the scarcity of employees as it is in football. How many people can score you 20 goals a season? How many players can dictate a midfield? Those people are going to command high wages. And that's the top and bottom of it. That's why people get paid 400 grand a week, 300 grand a week. That's why Lionel Messi was getting 2.6 million a week, which is never reported, right? That's why they're getting offered those sorts of deals, because they're the only people that can service those deals. Who else can you get to be Messi, to be Ronaldo? They get paid for that. How many people can you get, to do whatever? That's the problem. That is the problem. Like, Remy here saying, one half decent season, he thinks he's Kobbie. Fuck's sake, stop hanging around Trashford, innit? So many fucking assumptions. So many assumptions just getting dished out. I just don't think are correct. I just don't think they're correct. Banlet says it's also why the Spanish league is so boring. It's a factor for sure. Yeah. There has to be a competitive nature of leagues. John says, for some of the interviews I've seen on Kobbie, doesn't seem like the type of guy to be demanding 200k a week. Stinks of the agent. Biggest client trying to get a payday. Personally, if I had to put my money on it, that's what I would be lining it up as. Ratchet says, Steve, did I have any alternatives for Red Bull? Trying to stop soft drinks, but healthy alternatives would be good for cravings. Yeah, one sec. Yeah, I'm on this. It's called Optimize from Combat Fuel. They don't sponsor me. I just have shitloads of it. And I have them in these Nalgene bottles. This one's empty. I've got another one ready to go over there. I have shitloads of these just lying about the place because I just drink these all day long. Here's another one. Yeah, that's what I have. I have a litre of water. You're supposed to have 6 scoops of it in a litre. I just have 2 because otherwise it can get a little bit gritty. But that's fine. It's got a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's got no sugar. It's got all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm happy days with that. Ruben says, don't want to be the guy that derails the football chat, but being a veteran, my thoughts on the US conducting war plans on Signal. The British Army's on Signal as well. I think it's a slightly more encrypted version of a messaging app, but it's probably genuinely terrifying how many militaries are conducted over apps that everyone can get their hands on. Probably quite terrifying if you really looked into it. It does not surprise me in the slightest. Don't necessarily agree with it, but that's how it works, and that's what's on it. Doro Hedoro says, is Mainoo a box-to-box like Bellingham or creative like Bruno? I would argue your examples are not necessarily correct. I think he's probably not got the speed to be, or aggression to be a genuine box-to-box player like that, but I think he can be a playmaker for sure. What I want to see from him is more switches, more the sort of balls that you've been seeing Casemiro play lately, add a bit of range to him. Steven says, I read that WhatsApp has better encryption. Couldn't tell you, to be honest, I've never looked into it. United fan says Mainoo's more of a Gundogan profile, in my opinion. I can see that, to be honest. Wouldn't mind him chipping in with the sort of goals that Gundogan did. What has Mainoo done this season? One good thing, tell me. He's not had a great season this season. But are you saying that you just get rid of him? Like he's not good enough to play? Like, I have seen some good performances from him this season. Off the top of my head, I don't know when they were. I haven't got a list of his matches and his ratings to hand. But are you telling me that he's not a good footballer? He had a good season last season. He had an injury. I don't think he was involved in pre-season because of that injury. And he's not had a good season on the back of it this season. Throw him away? Right, all right, cool. AJ says, I feel like Garnacho is more likely to stay than Mainoo. Not sure about that. Shinna says, Euro is on 115 base. Sure, Mainoo deserves the same. Remy says, 3 goals, 1 assist in 24 games. Why are you tallying up the stats for a midfielder in that sense? Thinking that that means fucking anything. Kieran says, what are people expecting him to do in this team? Some fans are dumb. A lot of fans are dumb. Cameron says, does he play in the double pivot or behind the striker the rest of the season? I really don't know. I think alongside someone like an Ugarte, I think he could be a real asset. Obviously, Ugarte is going to do a lot of the more speedier running for him. But again, it depends on the rest of the team and the makeup of the rest of the team. I like him in the advanced role. I don't think he's got the pace to run beyond a striker, which I think we do lack. And I think if you've got him and Xerxes sort of playing that role in behind a striker, you really do limit your in-behind threat. But I think you would keep the ball really well with those two. And I think Xerxes got nice feet, and I think Mainoo has got nice feet. They might end up playing a similar role, but I do think Mainoo could play further back. I think there's a hell of a lot of intelligence to his game, a hell of a lot of composure to his game. I want to see him at a bit more passing range, but he's press resistant. He probably just needs to get a little bit quicker with his footwork, and he'd be happy days. John says, if we jumped into the free agent market, would I take Gomez back? Yep. I did put it in one of my videos that I would have him as a wild card one. Doro Hedoro says, Collier has better hold-up and passing game than Mainoo. Right, I completely fucking disagree with you on that one, but we are entitled to our opinions, so it's cool. Apna says, everyone, including Mainoo's agent, needs to slow down. The guy's still a teenager. Yep. Josh says, if you put player's name into a word like Rashford, you're 8 years old maximum. Yep. Scott says, a bad 6 months, then these kids are shit and get rid. The short-term mindset is half the problem with the fan base. Totally agree with that. Madison says, yeah, play him near the box. FBA says, Mainoo can't, all caps, by the way, Mainoo can't even play full 90 minutes and his wage demand is the main issue with fans. Is it his demand though? That's the whole point of what I've been saying is it his demand? I don't actually know if it's his demand or if it's not his demand. John says, I would put him on the left side with Dorgo. I think they could build a good partnership. Yeah, I like that. Would I be concerned with Angel's physicality in the Prem? Nope. Dora Hidoro says, Mainoo's not an SS. But like a Panzer. He can't hold the ball. Wrong. He's not press resistant. Wrong. He can't dribble. Fucking wrong. He just plays like Højlund. Do you know who we're talking about here? Because I don't think you have a fucking clue what you're on about. How about that? Andy says, getting rid of Mainoo or Garnacho would be a madness. I disagree on Garnacho. I don't think he's going to develop into anything of note as a winger. Mainoo, I think, has got a hell of a lot to like about him. Would I create Rashford commune in the middle of Montana? What? Andrew says, on paper, a box midfield of Agati, Mainoo, Bruno and Ahmad looks fantastic. If only, I think it lacks a bit of height. It lacks a lot of height. Lacks a lot of height. Sanel says, doesn't he have 3 years left on his contract? Yes. Dodo Hero says, second striker. Yeah, I understand that. Oh, 1 second, I'm just going to have to get this. Dave, just grab that for me. Grab that. Just tell him I'm busy and I'll get to him in a sec. Sorry, after the bloody mess about earlier with EE, they've just phoned me up now. No, just keep on the line. Keep on the line. Sam says, Mainoo just lacks a bit of pace, that's all. I think that's the only thing, yeah. Ross says, Mainoo can't dribble. Have people really not watched him or they've been living under a rock? Theo says, the myth I can't believe. Cameron says, Academy Scoop just reported that Mantanto set to sign his first contract and make his debut before the end of the season. Nice. Kevin says, people need to remember that Kobbie is 19, ceiling is so high. Darren says, Mainoo has more to develop in his game. His trouble at the moment is because he's still filling those holes in his game. He's not a nailed-on starter in a particular position. To be fair, I think that's a good point, and I'm not 100% sure who is a starter in a particular position, because it feels like even Bruno is kind of shunted into the deeper role just because he can play that deeper role with the energy that he's got. I don't know if Bruno's a nailed-on starter in this system. I mean, of course he is, but like he's not really the sort of 10 that plays in this system, and he's not really the sort of 8 that plays in this system. So where does, like, he is the perfect sort of number 10 in a 4-2-3-1, but there isn't a natural fit for him in a 3-4-3 Ruben Amorim system, in my opinion, I think. Leonard says, Mainoo is shit. He wouldn't get in the City squad. Pep wouldn't rate him. Fucking objectively wrong, but right, fine. Sam says, joining late. We are selling one of our best. Are we selling one of our best youngsters in the past decade, if not more? No, I don't think we are. Noel says, if Mainoo was at Brighton, everyone would want us to sign him. Kids a baller, give him time. This is the point I was making on the podcast yesterday. If Diblin's worth 100 mil, how are people only talking about 70 million for Kobbie Mainoo? What has Diblin done more than look quite good? Because I think he does look quite good, and I would absolutely try and sign him if I was United, but not for 100 million. Yet when people look at what Kobbie Mainoo's achieved and then go, well, yeah, but he's only 70 million. Doesn't add up, does it? Joe says, just the engine for me in a 2-role midfield, can't see Mainoo fitting. Yeah, I can buy that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think in terms of like the tenacity of him, it doesn't quite suit his game to be played in a 2, unless you're going to have the fullbacks cover that area just a little bit more, or you're going to hold the ball a hell of a lot better. Steven says, Garnacho should be cashed in on this summer. Josh said, you should put the minimum age on my videos. No one 14 or below allowed. Akash says, Diblin's apparently worth more than Southampton FC. Make it make sense. Sir Lyon says, Diblin looks brilliant, but let's be honest, nobody at Southampton thinks he's worth 100 million. Brian says, if we sell Maguire and Lindelof in the summer, Evans retires and Martinez still injured, we need centre-backs. Would I take Howson for 50 mil. I don't know if he'll have 50 mil to spend on that. I think that there's a reason why you might be looking at Kokonki and Heaven as your centre halves, in all honesty. Jan Ingerhoff says reporting 100 million and then get 60 to look good, possibly. S. Madison says, why is Ugarte getting abused by United fans online? I haven't seen that, and I don't know if he is. Abhinav says, Eno thinks Diblin is 100 million as a dingbat. Zem says, if Mainoo plays in the 2, needs someone to complement him better. I don't think Ugarte does that, nor does Mainoo complement Ugarte. I think they do, actually. I think they do. Kirk says, I would love to have Gomez back at United. Him in the middle with Ugarte would be great. I think Gomez... is almost like a leveling up on what you'd get with Mainoo in that position. Not as big, not as physically strong. Possibly for that reason, I say not quite as press resistant, but only in a couple of circumstances. In other circumstances, arguably way more press resistant. But in terms of like playing out and passing the ball into midfield with your back to midfield, I think Mainoo suits that a little bit better than Angel does. But Angel's got way more evasive driving and dribbling. He's also got a better range of passing. So I think if you got Angel in, it would be a similar profile to what you would be getting and how you would be playing Mainoo. Sam says Mainoo is not your typical academy player, overly excited, trying to show skills. Instead, he plays like he's been in the league for years, and dare I say it's priceless at 19. Yeah, I think his composure is outrageous. Red Forever says Gomez is too lightweight for the Prem. I don't believe that's the case. There's no fucking tackling in the Prem anymore. I think the only problem, if you had Gomez, having Gomez, Ugarte, Mainoo, Bruno, fucking Ahmad, that's half of your team potentially that are 5 foot something, right? The game is going the opposite way. And, Dorgu's not the tallest either. So, the game is going the opposite way. You need fucking units. Look at what happened to us with set plays against Arsenal. You've got to have fucking bigger boys. You need people that can win a fucking header. And we ain't got that at the moment. Yeah. Joey says, what's my favourite non-curse word? Widge, donkey, melon, melt. All of the above. Right, Dave's still on hold over there, so I better go and fucking deal with this situation and hopefully have some answers. Either way, take it easy. We'll have another How to Fix United video coming out, I think, on Sunday, so stay tuned for that. Got one about Mason Mount tomorrow, and then we're back in action Monday with a preview, because United have got a game again. Either way, take it easy. If you're in the area tomorrow, come down to Hyde, 3 o'clock kickoff. Paddock are playing, and we are in our final push for promotion. It's free entry. Come get in the mix. Otherwise, take it easy and have a good weekend. See you in a bit. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.